Okay, good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Western Association for College Admission Counseling Virtual College Fair. We're excited that you are here this evening. We have two really great presenters lined up for you this evening. They're excited to talk to you a little bit more about the UC and Cal State admission applications. So a few housekeeping announcements before we get started. Your cameras and microphones are turned off, so don't worry, we can't see you or hear you. Hopefully you can see and hear us okay. If for some reason you can't, just send us a message using that Q&A button and we'll be happy to help troubleshoot that with you. Speaking of the Q&A button, that's really your best way to engage with our presenters this evening. So as you have questions throughout the session, feel free to type those in Q&A and they'll be answering those throughout the session as we go. So feel free, you can ask questions collectively or about individual campuses and universities, and they will handle them throughout the session. Don't forget, this is just one of many sessions being offered, so be sure to check the StriveScan website where you signed up for additional sessions you might be interested in, as well as additional fairs in April and May as well. And then finally, the session is being recorded and will be available within about a week at the strivescan.com/WACAC website. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to kick things off.
Hi there, good afternoon, evening to all. We're going to introduce ourselves really briefly and then we'll get started with our presentation. We have 45 minutes and we'll leave some time for Q&A in there. We are going to be trying to answer most everything live, but we won't be able to type and present at the same time. So if we answer yours toward the end, just hang tight and we'll get through it. So my name is Lisa Rubio and I'm Director of Admissions Operations for undergraduates out at Cal State San Bernardino.
My name is Jessica Green. I'm an admissions officer at UC San Diego. So we're going to get started this evening talking about the systems in our campuses. So again, my name is Jessica. I'm an admissions officer and I work for UC San Diego. So I'm a part of the University of California system. So the University of California system's mission is teaching, research, public service, and each campus has a unique personality. We're all different and we all have unique student bodies. So there are different undergraduate campuses. You can see them on your screen now: Davis, Berkeley, Santa Cruz, Merced, Santa Barbara, UCLA, Riverside, Irvine, and San Diego. And so we're all independent campuses. We're all a part of the University of California system and in one application, but we are all separate campuses with separate review processes. And I'll hand it over for Lisa to talk a little bit about the CSU.
Thank you, Jessica. So as you can see from the map here, we have 23 Cal State campuses spread across the state. We go from Humboldt in the north all the way down to San Diego State in the south. There's a wide variety of campuses. There's both small campuses like Channel Islands, mid-sized campuses where I'm located at San Bernardino with 21,000 plus students, and then very large campuses like Long Beach, Northridge, Cal State Fullerton. So you have a wide variety in both area as well as type of campus. So there really should be a campus that matches you in terms of size, majors offered, and what you're interested in doing. We do offer all bachelor's and master's degrees. It's very limited educational doctorate degrees. And if you're looking for applied research, any of those, that would be at the grad level for a lot of our master's programs. Next slide. Okay, so as a freshman, how do you become prepared to transfer or to become admissible as a freshman to our UCs and our Cal States? Really, we're both looking at what we call the A through G pattern, and that's just a listing, and you can see that on the left. The courses are just named as A category, B category, etc. for history, English, math, science with lab. We do require biological science and a physical science. I believe the UC is the same. Language other than English, it does need to stay in the same language for the 2 years that are required, visual and performing arts, and then electives. So all of those courses need to be passed with C or better before graduation from high school. That is a minimum requirement to become eligible.
Yeah, and I'm so happy Lisa spoke about this because it's a minimum requirement to become eligible for University of California or the California State University system as a first-year applicant. So make sure you're reviewing your coursework as you're in high school to make sure that you're going to be A through G eligible so that you can get admitted to a four-year institution like one of ours.
I'll briefly mention if you're questioning or kind of asking about how you make up coursework, it does need to be a repeat of the same exact course before you graduate from high school. If you complete a different class, say it's AP English, you don't do well and you repeat it with regular English, you're still going to have that AP English grade be counted. So just be cautious when you're talking with your counselors about how you repeat courses, make up courses, so that way all the A through G is fulfilled. So this slide is showing how you find out what's an A through G class at your high school. So in order for you to know what qualifies for an A through G, which subject area, you can visit the website ucop.edu, the A through G guide, and just search in your school. You'll go to the A through G course list, you'll search your school, and a big long list of every A through G will come up there. Depending on the year that you took it, you'll do some searching, and if it's there, it's an A through G.
So now we're just going to talk a little bit more about the California State University system, and Lisa is going to share some information about the CSU.
Sorry about that. Okay, so we're going to talk about CSU Impaction. This is unique to the Cal States. This is really where we have more applications from qualified students than we can accept. And this happens in various levels at the different campuses. So you'll really have to look at the one that you're interested in and find out how we're admitting. There's 3 types. You can be at a campus who's not impacted, and that's the first listing here, admit using CSU eligibility. That means any student that's CSU eligible can be admitted. Then you have campus impaction. That can be at the freshman or transfer level, where freshmen may have a higher requirement or be admitted by a local area, just like our transfers. Or we have campuses that are impacted across all programs and majors. So similarly, we have Long Beach, we have Cal Poly SLO, we have Fullerton, where you're impacted across all majors. Regardless of your local area, you do have to meet higher requirements. Next slide. So this slide is showing you, based on the freshman level, who falls into which category. So on the left here, CSU minimum eligibility, those are non-impacted campuses. Bakersfield, Channel Islands, Dominguez Hills, East Bay, etc. You can meet minimum requirements there and be eligible for any of their majors. The middle section there is campus impaction at the freshman level. So at these campuses, if you're applying as a freshman, you do need to meet higher requirements. That's set by the campus, depending on your local area. So you'll just have to be researching on the websites and really keep in contact with the recruiters at that school. One thing to note, you do have a local area, whatever high school you are at. So you need to also find out who is your local CSU and make sure you include them in your application process, because you always want to have your local where you are more likely to be admitted. And then the campuses on the right are impacted across all programs. So regardless of where you're coming from, what you're applying to, it's more difficult to get in. They have a large number of applications. There's a lot higher criteria. Okay, so how do we calculate your GPA? And Jessica can give you some details as well about the UC. For the CSU, we are looking really at 10th and 11th grade for the application, 12th grade to keep you admitted. So 9th grade, we do want you to take and pass your A through Gs. You need a C or better, but it's not counted toward your GPA. 10th grade, 11th grade is really where we calculate your A through G GPA, and then 12th grade, we confirm it to make sure you're admissible. We do offer honors points, but that's only a max of 8 semester points. So even if you take 20, you take however many, we can only give you a max of 8 additional honors points.
And during my portion on the UC, I'll talk a little bit about our GPA calculations. I want to remind everybody you can use the chat box to ask questions. And after Lisa gets through her slides, she's going to give a little bit of time to ask questions about the CSU. We can't hear you.
Sorry. So now that you know how to search for your A through Gs and calculate your GPA, you need to know what else you need to become admissible as a freshman. So we're looking at a combination of factors. And this last year, because of COVID, we had the multi-factor admission score that became available because of lack of SAT and ACT testing. So prior to that, we were using an eligibility index, but now this year we use multi-factor admission score. So depending what's going on, it may or may not change. We need all A through Gs completed. You're going to calculate your GPA based on A through Gs. And then if you're using eligibility index, it's based on a sliding scale. If you're using multi-factor score, it's based on attributes from your application that'll generate a score for you. And then once you graduate from high school, that completes all requirements. So based on that, you'll know where you stand and you can apply to the various campuses. Next slide. And then here's the website for how you apply to Cal State's. So it's called Cal State Apply. The website is listed at the top, calstate.edu/apply. You'll see this image in the middle. You'll select down on the bottom which term you're applying for. You do need to create an account. Once you do that, and you can do that at any point, junior year, sophomore year, etc. You can start comparing programs. You can start looking at campuses. It can give you more information on admission, can connect you to the campus website. So it really is useful. You're going to complete 4 quadrants on the application: basic information, all of your coursework, list in schools attended, what program you want. All of that will come together. And then each campus that you apply to will have a separate fee. So a $70 fee. Or if you're eligible for a fee waiver, that's included as well. We'll grant you within the application, so you don't have to wait to find out. And then you'll submit all at one time. So everything will come in at one time for the campus to review. Next slide, please. So important dates. This varies very little bit. The application dates and deadlines have always been October 1 through November 30th of each year for the next fall. So that would be during your senior year. This year, due to COVID, we did extend across a couple of the campuses out to December 15th, or a couple of campuses went a little bit later. For that, you would just have to watch and listen what's going on, follow on social media, just check with the campus to make sure. But most campuses close by November 30th. So you have a 2-month window to get in there, work on your application, and then when it's totally completely ready, you can submit as long as it's well before the 30th deadline. For FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, it is highly encouraged. A lot of campuses require it for scholarship purposes, scholarship review. That's going to happen the same time period. It'll open October 1st, but the priority deadline is March 2nd. So you have a little bit more time to complete that with your parents or guardians. And then for the EOP program, or Educational Opportunity Program, that's for students who are first-gen, underrepresented students that may need extra support throughout their college experience. That is a separate application. It's built into Cal State Apply, so you will do it in the same platform, but it is a separate application. That one requires letters of recommendation, personal statement there, so you need some extra time to work on that one. The main application is due November 30th, but you get an additional month to turn in letters of rec and personal statement.
I just wanted to add, Lisa was talking about the FAFSA. The California DREAM Act also has the same deadlines, that October 1st to March 2nd, opening October 1st, and you want to complete it hopefully by March 2nd, so you can get Cal Grant if you are a California resident.
If you decide to come to the CSU as a transfer student, the CSU for the last maybe 7 or 8 years has only taken what is considered an upper division transfer student. And so this is the minimum criteria for an upper division transfer. We ask that Golden 4 courses are completed, and that's your English, your math, your speech, and your critical thinking at whichever community college you're attending. It's going to be 60 transferable units. So once you attend the community college, you will have to stay until the 60 transferable units are completed in order to be eligible to come over to Cal State. And the way that you learn what classes are transferable is very similar to in high school for A through Gs. You'll use assist.org and it'll give you a very similar list of what counts as a transferable class into a major or into a campus. And then you'll also have to meet the minimum GPA requirement, whether it's for the program, the campus, or the level. So just depending what you're interested in, you'll have to do some research. Again, similar questions, start asking, talking to the recruiters, so that way you find out what's the GPA requirement for that major, or what is the additional requirement if you're doing music and there's an audition, like whatever additional requirements there are, you'll have to have the minimum plus any of those. Okay, so some resources for you on here. Utilize your college and career center is really your main resource. That should always be your starting point. They really are the ones who have the, the details, can connect you with staff, can get you appointments, etc., can help with deadlines. So really start there. Every campus also has an admissions office with recruitment counselors, so please chat with them as well. They do very similar work. They come out and do presentations. They will assist with the application. They really are a great resource. And then just some web resources for you. The main CSU website is calstate.edu. There's a lot of information on there. Depending if you're a parent, a student, alumni, you can really, get on there and kind of look through everything. That's a great starting place, but I highly recommend that you visit the campus websites. It's 23 very, very unique campuses. Everyone does everything a little bit different. The processes are different. The deadlines may be different. We may have some overarching deadlines, but most everything else will be different and unique depending on the campus. So you'll need to look at housing, look at tours, get a good sense of where the campus is. So that way you have that information. If there's any supplemental applications, you're taking care of those. You just have a lot of resources that need to be gathered before you do your application. So I highly recommend going there.
Well, Lisa, while you were speaking, I put the link to your downloadable swag items in the chat box for everybody. And we do have 5 questions in the Q&A that have come through while you were speaking. We have about 2 minutes, so maybe we could go through a few CSU-oriented questions. So someone was asking about, you had mentioned honors and AP courses, the cap of the units. So does one semester of an AP honors class equal an honors point, or is it one school year? So is there any context or resources you could provide to help people understand that a little bit more?
Yes. So for the honors and AP points, it's per term. So if your school semester, each semester is one additional point. We really award in 11th grade honors classes, 11th grade AP. If you took a higher level, say an AP physics class or something in 10th grade, we will take it, but the honors points are traditionally coming from 11th grade. And yes, it's one per term, per semester.
Lisa, would you be able to provide more details on what the CSU is looking for besides GPA, some of those adjustments that you had to make during this time?
Yes. So every campus is unique. We've all adopted the multi-factor score a little bit differently, but in essence, it comes from Cal Poly SLO. They've always used the multi-factor process as part of their admission. So this year, due to not having SATs available, ACTs available, the rest of the campuses adopted that style as well. There's an additional set of questions built within the application that are going to ask you about work experience, extracurricular activities, participation in educational programs. Are you first generation student? There's a lot of attributes that are being requested, and they're all pretty self-explanatory, simple answers. There's no statements needed. You're just going to be answering yes, no, number of hours, etc. And all of that will be populated into a table that will build an attribute score for a student. The main portion, though, of your attribute score is your GPA. So that is the highest factor that will give you the most points. So you want to aim for the strongest GPA possible. Everything else will really just, bump you a little bit, but nothing like your GPA. So focus on that one for sure.
Well, thanks for providing that clarification for us. So I'm going to get into the University of California system. So we're going to pivot. So everything that we just spoke about is CSU oriented. Now we're going to talk about the University of California, and we will have some more time for question and answer. So first, what I'm going to do is start with a quick overview of the UC application process. So listed here on the screen, you can see some dates and deadlines. The University of California application opens August 1st. So if you're interested in applying to UC Irvine, UCLA, UC Santa Barbara, some of our undergraduate campuses, you're going to use the same UC application. It opens August 1st, and we have a 30-day submission period between November 1st and November 30th. So although you can open it and access it August 1st, of your senior, right before your senior year, if you're a first-time applicant, then you can access it August 1st, but you can only submit it between November 1st and November 30th. We notify students about admission decisions typically in mid-March. So for first-year students in mid-March, and then transfer students in about April time. And we ask that students submit their intent to register by May 1st for that first year applicant cycle. So Lisa was saying freshman, the University of California says first year as a first time applicant coming from high school. And then we do a waitlist notification between May and June if someone is waitlisted. So for first year admission requirements for the University of California, we are looking also at your A through G classes. But the GPA that we look at is your 10th and 11th grade weighted GPA only. The rigor that you took in 9th grade, of course, it's important, as well as the rigor that you took in 12th grade. But your GPA for admissions consideration is just coming from that 10th and 11th grade weighted GPA A through G classes that you've taken. For the fall 2021, the University of California did not consider SAT or ACT test scores as a factor in admissions decisions. The University of California has not made a broad statement about fall 2022 and the use of ACT or SAT test scores. However, many campuses have already put out statements that they're not going to use test scores. So you want to look at each campus's website for updates as they adopt what they want to do for fall 2022 admission for first year applicants. But during fall 2021, because we didn't use test scores, it really wasn't so different for the University of California because we do a comprehensive review process, and we've always done a comprehensive review process. So not having test scores was just not having one thing when we always looked at so many other factors. So we were always looking at rigor. We were always looking at your honors and awards or special talents, your personal insight questions that you answer, as well as other factors that we consider. So there are actually different review factors within our process. And I'll get into that a little bit in a minute. For the transfer review, if you want to apply as a transfer student, you're going to graduate from high school, and then you're going to go on to hopefully one of our fantastic California community colleges. And you're going to take, as Lisa mentioned, the same amount of coursework. So we, for the University of California, look for 60 UC transferable units. And just like Lisa said, you're going to use assist.org to help you understand transferability. So if you're a transfer student, you're going to lean on your advising staff at your community college to figure out what 60 UC transferable courses you want to take. You want to have a competitive GPA from your transfer coursework. You're going to have a minimum set of class requirements, like an English and a math, and then major prep as well. So we call our minimum subject requirements for transfer the 7-course pattern. So it's 7 classes you have to have in order to be able to transfer to the University of California system. And then major prep, there's gonna be classes if you wanna transfer that you have to take in order to be eligible for some of our more competitive majors like a biology, for example. But we would definitely encourage you, if you're interested in transferring, to use Assist, and you might wanna create a transfer admission planner. So if you're planning on graduating from high school and going to the California Community College, creating a UC TAP account, a UC transfer planner account, could help you in the long run with your planning process. So the first year review is a comprehensive admission review. So if you're going to be a senior in high school, you're going to be looked at like this: comprehensive review. So we've got our applicant pool, and we're looking at academic factors, extracurricular factors, contextual factors, and your personal insight questions. So there are actually multiple different review factors, including your GPA, your eligibility, and your local context might become a part of it. as well as classes that you plan to take, the rigor of your classes. So there's just a lot of different factors, and we do this comprehensive review. It's not just one thing that someone might get admitted to the University of California for. It's a comprehensive factor kind of system. We have common pitfalls that students usually experience when they fill out the application. So if you are going to be a senior and you're going to fill out the application for fall 2022 admission, the University of California only admits for fall cycles typically. So the next application cycle is fall 2022. So one of the most common pitfalls is with this residency question, where students are asked about citizenship, residency, putting in a social security number. If you're in a situation where you don't have a social security number, you can just leave it blank. Another common pitfall we see is this income section. Students get really hung up on it and kind of confused about how to answer. Just answer for your current situation. So if you're in a one-parent household, two-parent household, or you're just living, maybe you're living with legal guardians or other. So just be honest about your current situation and then put in income. Really, the income on this part of the UC application is just so you can qualify for a fee waiver, because our fee waiver is built into the application. So the way you answer the questions in the About You section in the beginning of the application will result in a fee waiver at the end if you are qualifying. Another common pitfall is majors. So all of the University of California campuses do independent review processes. So I don't call up UCLA and say, hey, are you going to admit Joe Smith? I'm thinking about admitting Joe Smith. Are you going to admit Jane? We don't do that. So we all have different separate reviews, and we all have different majors at our campuses. And I think a common thing that people really struggle with is the name of the majors, understanding what majors are offered at each campus. So we would really encourage you to do a little research on the front end to understand what majors each campus offers, so that filling out this section of the application is a breeze. And then courses taken in high school that you took at the college level. That is also a common pitfall. If you're a high school senior and you took a community college level class, that is awesome. It shows rigor. So what you want to do is put in all your high school classes and then add your community college and put in all your community college classes. So that is commonly people get a little confused about that process, but put in all your high school and then put in all your college under your college. The activities and awards section is a really great area of the application to make sure you focus on. So you're going to tell us about activities, awards, extracurriculars, work experience. But there's also a lot of things that you do that make you that aren't traditional, I guess, activities. Maybe you translate for your family members. Maybe you're a caregiver for your siblings. So make sure you give yourself credit for these things, because they show a lot of qualities that the University of California is trying to understand about you. So make sure that you fill out your activities and awards section. And when you're focusing on that, I would definitely, think about your community involvement, your leadership, and then the scope and context. So when you fill out that section, you have the opportunity to use 250 characters. So if you were a leader, say you were a leader. If you raised money for something, tell us how much, be giving that context to help us understand your level of involvement in these activities. So be descriptive with your 250 characters. And then we have our personal insight questions. So for first year applicants, there are 8 questions to choose from, and you choose 4 to write. And it's one of these comprehensive review factors that we're looking at, a maximum of 350 words for each response. And we would love it if you just chose the questions that spoke to you the most. When you're writing your personal insight questions, it shouldn't be hard. You shouldn't be trying to find something to write about. Just a lot of times what students will be successful if they write all 8 and then they decide, hey, these are my strongest 4. And we would really encourage you that with your personal insight questions, they're not an essay. So don't think about your English class essay. Just more of like I statements, like, I did this and this is how it impacted me. So best practices is using I statements, writing about specific examples. I worked with a student this year who had done a documentary on Martin Luther King, and just the specific examples of talking about getting in to interview people and how they had to get permission from their school, just specific examples of your experience that express your passion so we can read about who you are. Definitely get feedback from those you trust. We would really recommend not using quotes because it's really hard in 350 words to quote someone else. We would recommend against just listing things, make sure you're providing examples, and focusing on yourself instead of parents and guardians. And really what context means is it's just kind of like the frame around your experience. So we're looking for everything that's happening to you. So providing that context for the reader. So the personal insight question, I'd say it's for you. You know, it is your unique story. And then the additional comments that you can put in the application are really providing context and clarification. And the University of California application has 2 places where you can put additional comments. One after you enter all your academic history, and one after the personal insight question section. So the one after your academic history, it's 550 characters, and that's really a lot. So you can share any information about your academics that you want campuses to know. And it's going to help us, again, get that context. It's not required, but I like to think of it as a picture frame. So why would you put additional comments in? Your unique story is in the center, but then there's all these things that were happening around you. You know, the COVID-19 grading changes. Did you have breaks in attendance because you had a concussion or you got hurt? Or did your grading scale or curriculum change at your high school? Did your school environment change? I mean, there's a lot you could talk about. I mean, I remember visiting a school once where they were doing construction and they didn't have a ceiling. I'm sure that impacted that student's educational journey that semester. So you can use that to provide comments also if you had a non-traditional school experience. Maybe you were homeschooled and then you transitioned, or you studied out of the country. So we would definitely encourage you to use the additional comments boxes. And then the additional comment box after the personal insight question section, you can use that too to elaborate on a circumstance or experience that you didn't put anywhere else in the application. It's not a place to do an entire new personal insight question, and it's not a place to copy and paste your resume, but it is a place where if you didn't write about having a learning disability anywhere else, you can put a few sentences there. If you didn't write about an unusual family circumstance anywhere else in the application, you could put a few sentences there, because really you're just hoping that the reader gets to understand who you are in your academic context. And then we do have some resources. I will pop some of these links in the chat box. Lisa saw on the University of California website, we have a CSU UC minimum requirements comparison chart because we share the same minimum requirements, but there's a few little caveats that are a little different. So I'll pop that in the chat box for people to take a look at. And then I am ready to take some questions. Lisa, I don't know if there's any that came in that you might be able to help me with.
Yeah, so Jessica was able to answer several and give the CSU answer, but there's a few in here that are UC specific. So one is our senior year GPA taken into account for acceptance at UCs.
So your senior year GPA, the University of California system is just looking at that 10th and 11th grade weighted GPA A through G classes. So that's the core GPA we're looking at. There might be some campuses that after they read your application, maybe they'll ask you to provide your senior year grades, but it's not as common. So really that core GPA is your 10th and 11th grade weighted GPA A through G classes.
There was also another question about being test blind versus test optional. I did provide an answer on there, but just to open up to the group, test blind for the CSU this year means that a test score can be submitted and used for academic placement, meaning for English and math freshman year, but it will not be used toward admission requirements. So that's test blind. Test optional is the other on the spectrum where it can be submitted. And I don't know if UC is test optional or blind this year, but you can answer that portion, Jessica.
Yeah, so the University of California system is using the terminology test free. So we have some campuses that have already announced that for fall 2022 admission, they'll be test free. So I would make sure you go to each campus's website to understand which campuses have made that announcement already. But to my knowledge, the University of California system as a whole has not made a statement yet about test free for fall 2022 as a whole. I see that we have some other questions coming in. Someone asked what sorts of questions might be posed as PIQs. So the personal insight question, I'm happy you use the acronym PIQ because that's what they're called. And I think sometimes people get confused. So PIQ, personal insight question, the questions are all the same every year. So the University of California website is a really good place. Maybe just Google right now, University of California PIQ questions, because they haven't changed in probably 3 years now. So they're all going to be the same in standard. And then Lisa, there's a question coming in for the CSUs as well about impacted categories. Maybe you could go over that again. I don't know if you want me to go back to the slide.
So the question is asking, how would you characterize impaction at the various UCs, if at all? I think it's fairly Cal State specific, the way that we utilize impaction at campus levels. So I think it's hard to frame it for another system. But if Jessica can kind of frame to you, I think it's hard to connect it because it's so specific to the Cal States and the way that we do admission.
Someone was asking when I said for the University of California that it might not be best practice to use quotes in our PIQs, did you mean quotes from other people and media? So we were saying it might not be a best practice to use quotes because you only have 350 words. And when you are using 25 of those words on some words from Gandhi, that's great. But are you going to have enough words left to talk about yourself and your experiences? So when you don't talk about yourself, it's a missed opportunity for us to learn something about you. So I would just think about your character count for your PIQs thoughtfully. So another person is just asking how are UCs impacted? And so the University of California system, it's popular. We get a lot of applications. The CSU is popular too. I think we have such two great university systems in California. And so we receive a lot of applications. And so I wouldn't necessarily use the terminology impacted, but campuses have varying degrees of acceptance rates. And so we all use the comprehensive review process, and you just want to apply broadly. And Lisa and I talked about this the other day, applying broadly for all of your options, between the University of California system, between the the CSU system. Look at all of your options and really be honest with yourself about where you can see yourself succeeding. So we do receive a lot of applications to the University of California system, as to the CSU does as well.
Mm-hmm. There's a question in the Q&A about taking community college level classes if it's more practical than taking AP courses in high school. This is really a common question. It's becoming more common as students fail AP classes, and community college may be free while you're in high school. You have to consider this on a very personal basis. When I usually talk to students, what happens senior year, the reason we revoke admissions later in the term is because seniors fail AP English. That's a very common course that gets failed senior year. And so you have to be really careful. I think if you're strong in the subject and you're going to pass because you enjoy it, then you should challenge yourself and take that AP. If you're not so sure, then that might be something you want to try at the community college level, or something that's not going to be a detriment to you graduating or a detriment to your admission. So you should really talk with your counselor, with your family, kind of make those decisions before you register for the course. And especially if you fail that first term, you need to make the adjustment, get out of that course, review how you can make that class up. You have to be really cautious because that will revoke your admission.
I agree with Lisa that it's a personal choice, and you have to be honest with yourself about what level of success you think you're going to have in the coursework, whether it's AP or college level. Another person asked, do I need to submit different PIQs for different UC campuses? No. So the University of California application, the information you provide is for any UC you apply to. So you're going to fill out one application and then click the campuses that you want to send that application to. And we're all going to get the same content. So we're going to see exactly the same thing. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
And on the Cal State side, it's fairly similar. The bulk of your application is living in one area. So you're going to answer 3 quadrants, all for the CSU minimum requirements. And then a 4th quadrant is going to populate per campus and major. So say you select a campus at, engineering at Northridge, or, architecture at Cal Poly Pomona. Those will show up in your 4th quadrant, and you will complete those separately before you submit. So you will submit a separate one with the same 75% the same information to each of the campuses.
Another person was asking, with the UC viewing honors and AP courses differently, or are the points the same? So those websites that Lisa pointed to earlier, when you look at A through G eligibility, it also at those websites, will designate if the course is a UC approved honors class. And so if it's a UC approved honors class, it's going to have the same amount of extra weight behind it as an AP course. So IB, AP, honors as well.
And then we probably have time for about 1 or 2 more. There is one in here asking in general if there's any special concern areas or areas of focus for out-of-state students. And that's a really great question. I think when I framed impaction for you, I mentioned being from a local area or an out-of-local area. Out-of-state student applicants, and we have many of them, are just viewed as an out-of-local. So you're not in a separate category. You fall in with all other out-of-locals, for each campus. The only difference is at a non-impacted CSU. So for instance, Cal State East Bay or Dominguez Hills, they would meet minimum CSU requirements and you would still be held to out-of-local. So that's the only difference.
I just popped my email in the chat box if there's things that we don't necessarily get to, or if anyone wants to connect to ask more UC-oriented questions. And Lisa, was there one you had your eye on for us to answer next, or Tyler, you're coming in. So is it, do we have one time for one more, or?
Yeah, yep, we have 1 more minute.
There's one in here, a little bit general. If we were to fail an AP that's not in the A through G, how much would that affect us? That should be very rare that there's an AP class that's not approved as an A through G. But basically any non-A through G class is not calculated in your A through G GPA. We do see your overall, but we're only looking at the A through G calculated. But it is very rare. I can't think of any that are not approved that's an AP course.
Yeah, I think it might be, and Lisa, maybe you'll agree with me, just in your best interest that if you do poorly in a course, finding ways to remediate it. But also just thinking about the scope of things, you're going to take multiple classes. Yeah, so really speak with your counseling staff at your school to talk about remediation options if you've done poorly in something and you're worried about it. Well, thanks everybody for joining us.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you and good luck.
I want to say thank you to Lisa and Jessica for presenting this evening. To all of our students, thank you for joining us. When you close this window, there will be a very quick 4-question survey pop up. If you don't mind taking a few minutes to fill that out for us, we'd really appreciate any feedback that you have. Don't forget, this is just one of many sessions being offered, so be sure to check that StrideScan website for any additional sessions you may be interested in this evening. And there will be additional fairs in April and May as well for you to participate in. Also, don't forget, this recording will be available on the StrideScan website within about a week as well. So thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening, and we will see you in the next session.
Thank you. Bye.